my name is Edward. I'm currently responsible for global sourcing within ECCO. And to give that a bit more context, ECCO is of course a shoe brand, but we have a bit of a unique individual value chain. So we own most of the process ourselves. So we do our own leather manufacturing, our own shoe manufacturing, and we own most of the retail and merchandising process as well. So to put that into context for my daily job, I manage the teams who are responsible for strategic sourcing for all the materials. And the biggest learnings over the past couple of years from us has been really finding the balance between agility and resilience. Of course, COVID brought a lot of distractions and a lot of trauma to a lot of people and a lot of disruption. And luckily, the fact that we actually have our own footprint and our own manufacturing meant that we did a lot of steps already before COVID happened on making sure we have a resilient supply chain. This, of course, paid dividends during the process. And now the balance is how do we take that resilience and make it more agile to be able to adapt in the future as well to ever-changing circumstances. Yeah. So from our side, for example, one of the things that we're going to be looking into is our forecasting process on raw materials. So right now that is a very manual process where we actually rely on input from the markets, which go to the factories who calculate consumptions, and then that gets fed back into my team to do calculations on how much material we need. And there, I think having an optimization process in place would save a lot of time and free up a lot of resource to actually do other things. So I think data and analytics is the biggest part where a big impact has been given. And I think the last events over the 3 years have been somewhat of a catalyst. It gave a new audience within companies to actual procurement people. There was a bigger seat at the table, so to say, and more thought was being put in from the entire business on decisions for procurement or sourcing. And the fact that we had these advancements on actually having data available and having the right systems in place that allowed us to give the right information and the right answers that were needed at the times to make critical decisions that were imperative to the business to keep moving ahead at that point. So I think the COVID was really the reason, and the fact that we had these advancements in the technology really enabled us to labor or take the fruits away from that. Prior to COVID already, we were looking into finding one system and one platform that could actually house a lot of the different data from a lot of different business units. Because in the past we had a lot of different systems which cater to very specific business units. And the aim at the end of 2018, start of 2019 was to try and eliminate that. So actually at the onset of COVID, we were already in the process of onboarding a new PLM system, which was more multifunctional than our previous one was, which allows merchandising, production, product development to actually all upload data onto one platform to make it one source of truth. Can track changes, can track all the data that you need, can do all the costings in the system. So that was a step that we took to try and actually have data integrity and cohesion within the business. But it's still a very common problem, I would say, in the business. Yeah, so for example, something like AI can really help with actually tracking and giving a potential future prediction for a material like polyester or whatever material you might use in the business. And this, of course, comes with commodity indexes which are based on locations. So having that data available for different locations and knowing where your manufacturing locations are, you're able to also potentially predict where you might have a better cost benefit in the future. And the other cost saving potential that is there with the data that you have is overall actually looking at new opportunities. If you're looking at it from a lead time perspective, touching back again on the freight perspective, you have a chance to save lead time if you're, let's say, shipping something from Europe to Asia or from North America to Europe. If you're then near sourcing, you're able to save this time. Intra-Asia, of course, there's a smaller gap for this to be a very beneficial thing. But overall, your lead time can shorten by making sure you have the right raw materials in place in these right countries, and that should be a consideration. One of the other considerations that you should have for near versus far sourcing is actual capabilities that these suppliers have. So do they have the right technical capabilities to be able to produce and manufacture the goods that you need at the right time, at the right price, at the right quality? Geopolitical instability is also a thing. So having a consideration where, okay, you might be manufacturing in a specific country because it's closer, but either there's instability on a government perspective or you have a labor shortage in place. So maintaining an actual ability to supply your goods or products is also a key pointer. And last but not least, I think having a clear picture on IP protection is important when you're reviewing near versus far sourcing. Yeah, so touching on some of the ones before, having freight lead times reduced can shorten your lead time. Having raw materials readily available in the countries where you choose to produce and whether that's far or near sourced can have a big impact on lead time. On a cost perspective, again, the freight comes into play, but additional to that, does the country where you're looking to near or far source have that raw material production locally, or are they relying on import of materials? How much does the labor cost? How much is the overhead cost of actually producing? That will have an impact on your final cost of the actual product. And on a sustainability agenda, of course, every industry or has different expectations. Some are more focused on the material, some are more focused on energy, some are more focused on CO2. But there will be times when this will, of course, be regulated by government. So making sure that the right decisions are made in an infrastructure where you're actually able to track all of these outputs is important. It's a good question. There's a balance to it. Right now, I don't think there's always a perfect middle ground yet. So one of the ways that you can actually manage this, but it's a bit more intensive as a process, but starting up with more small, medium-based suppliers and growing them up and actually teaching them how to do it. But that's a very hands-on exercise. So it actually means that you need to have all the knowledge in-house to be able to properly scale this, but it also means that you need to be able to give the right time to these vendors to grow into these kind of roles. If the expectation is that you hit the ground running and you immediately have all of these things in place, then you'll end up with more matured suppliers, which of course increase costs and also are less flexible generally in how they deliver their goods. So I think it's about finding the right mixture. It's a lot of the different countries where we currently manufacture today are not as up to speed with sustainability regulations. So for example, CO2 emissions. A lot of companies are still having to find out the way on how they calculate it, what they can do to reduce it. What does the CO2 impact actually mean? How do you actually choose whether you go for a circularity project or whatever it might be? It all depends on having the right knowledge at the right places. Somewhat, not entirely. I don't think it's fair to necessarily label it between West versus East, but there are a lot more governmental restrictions in place in, let's say, Europe or North America, which already define that these parameters need to be in place. But that does not mean that every supplier that is there is using it to its full ability. I think the most important thing is the attitude that people have towards it. Yeah, so the biggest thing is inspiration. A lot of the times we're all running full steam and firefighting and focusing on our own areas, but I think one of the big things that an event like ProcureCon brings is that you have a lot of people from a lot of different industries with a lot of different skill sets and knowledge, and it helps us to sometimes take a step back and look outside of our own garden to see how other industries are handling these kind of issues, what some of the trends are in other industries, and then to go back and see how this can actually be scaled within your own frame and your own line of work. And for the panel part, we touched on it a bit, but essentially it'll be the inclusion of technology into our day-to-day procurement processes. That's the main topic for the panel discussion. Good speakers, good knowledge, good sharing, good attendees. I think overall it's a good mix of different industries, good mix of different people. There's a lot of different kind of procurement professionals there from a lot of different levels, handling a lot of different kind of tasks. Good technology advisors there as well. So overall, I think the mix of people, the knowledge that is being brought forward, and the relevant topics. Yeah, 3 words, don't miss it.